11. Chapter 11, we will start with statistic, which is, again, the beginning of statistic is very introduction. This terminology is we won't, or I won't test you on the terminology. The homework do have some questions related to the terminology, but I don't believe the test or the quiz have the terminology. But again, this is what we have in terms of statistic. In terms of the first thing that we talking about statistic is the data, right? So the data is basically what are we trying to collect, right? What are we trying to study? Your data, you can collect the age of the student, the major, the birthday, whatever data or whatever item that you try to collect, you try to observe, that's your data, right? The weight, the height, the number of patients for our coronavirus. If you want to collect the patient, the number of patients, of the patient, meaning, again, whatever you try to study, that's your data, right? So in short, statistic is basically a branch in math that you try to collect the data, you try to organize the data, and then you try to test your data and make a conclusion, right? What kind of data, what does the data show us? What does the data tell us in terms of future value, right? That's what statistic is. But the thing for us in our class, we only do with the first two, which is we only organize, we collect the data, and we organize the data. We present the data, right? You won't get to make a conclusion until you get to Math 203, which is the elementary statistic. So right now we only doing with the first two things, which is collecting the data, organize them, and then kind of present them, right? So there are two things in statistics that they talk a lot, which is the population and the sample. The population is just everything we have, which is everything under the study that we have, and the sample is just a portion of it, right? So population, for instance, United States, if we want to collect your census, right? Your 2020 census, which is you have to fill in that your household income, not income, but your household, how many people live in there and stuff like that. We try to collect the data for the population. The sample is basically each state is a small sample of the whole population, right? It's a subset of the population, which is, again, it's just a small group of the whole population. And again, we won't get in detail of this two item until we get to 203. For now, just know that population is the whole item, and the sample is a small portion of that population. Okay? And again, the two branch of statistic we have is descriptive, which is that's what we're going to do in 120. We do a lot of descriptive statistic, which is basically collect data, analyze data, organize data, and present the data. You won't do any empirical statistic in terms that you have to make a decision from your data. You don't have to put in all the tests and make a decision. Is this a good data or bad data, or should we go ahead and invest, or should we not invest, right? For that, you get to 203, and if you get 203, you will get more detail or more information on that. So let's take a look at 11.1, which is, again, take all this preliminary definition out. Let's take a look at what does 11.1 and what 11.2 and 11.3 have in store for us. So look at this item here. This is, I just make up data, right? This data, I collect my data, and my data is the age, whatever. And the frequency, which is this table right here, ladies and gentlemen, this table is your frequency distribution table, right? So if they ask you, this is what we're going to do today a lot in terms that we will construct the frequency distribution table. right? So that will be later. But for now, let's say if they give you this data, and this is what you need to do is we need to draw the information from this data. We need to know what kind of, if they give us this data, how can we answer the question based on this data, right? So look at this thing here. This is the question I have for you, which is again this 9 question over here, right? Based on this data, we need to answer this question. So look at this data. How many data are in the study? Well, to know the number of data in the study, basically your frequency, which is again, basically they ask you how many people in this study, right? So in this study, how many people, which is if you add all the frequency up, which is again 27 people, right? We asked 27 people. If you add this 9, 13, 20, 24, 26, 27. So there are 27, which is the total number of frequency, is the total number of data that we have, right? Each people in terms of that. And again, looking at this thing here, each data divide into different class. They ask you how many class are there, which is, if you look at this thing here, we have 1 class, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is again, we have 7 class in total, right? We have 7 classes in total in terms of this thing here. So again, those 2 questions should be easy to answer, which is the number of classes, how many items breaking down into, and the total data, which is your total frequency. The class width, this is one thing, is the class width is basically each class, that how many data in each class, okay? So there are 2 ways to do this, which is one way is just count your data, right? You count 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, right? We count the data, which is we know that there are 6 data. That's one way to do it, which is you can count your data. One thing, the other thing they tell you, which is later on you will see this, all you need to do is take the next lower limit, which is, again, speaking of lower limit, this is your lower limit and this is your upper limit, right? The smaller number is your lower limit and the bigger number is your upper limit. So to find the class width, one thing they tell you is take the next lower limit minus the previous lower limit, which is 18 minus 12. That will give you 6 data. Do not take the upper limit minus the lower limit, okay? Do not take 17 minus 12. The reason is if you take 17 minus 12, you throw away the 12. You throw away the 12, and that's why you have 1 less data. You have to take either 18 minus 12 to give you 6, 24 minus the 18 to give you 6, 30 minus the 24, which is the next lower limit minus any previous, the previous one, right? Or the same thing is basically you ask yourself, every time you jump from the first class, you jump to the second class. Every time you jump, how many data did you add, right? From 12, I jump, I get 18, which is I add 6. From 18, I jump, I get 24, I add 6. Every time you jump from one class to the next, how many number did you add, which is, again, that's your class width. That's how big your class is. Same thing with the upper limit, right? Every time you jump with upper limit, every time you jump, you add 6 units to it, meaning, again, that's how big each of your class is. Now, what about, again, this is easy, right? What is the lower limit of the third class? The lower limit is easy in terms that the lower limit is 24, right? What is the upper limit of the 7th class? The 7th class is here. The upper limit will be 53. So again, as you can see, all of this question is very, very understandably easy, right? And again, how many people are older than 35, which is older than 35? We do not include 35 because 35 is not older than 35, which is we only include 36 and beyond, which is, do you agree that we have 4 people here, 2 here, 1 here, which is there are 7 people in this data is older than 35, right? So again, pretty much you just add your data up, and then ask what is the data, which data fit the description, right? How many people are younger, or 23 or younger, which is 23 or younger, which